Hi everybody, welcome back to Willie's American Guitars. I've got something pretty cool here. I just want to remind you too to make sure to show us some love on Facebook and YouTube as you can, please. And then we are still doing appointment only. Yes, we are moving. We'll be moving sometime in March. Now, what I have here is a 1937 Martin, and this is one of the top of the line guitars. There was only one guitar more expensive than this, and this is an F-7. So they made an F2, 3, 5, and 7, I think. But they made several models underneath this, and we've had a lot of those models. There's about 180 of these. One of the reasons it's so rare is because this is a Brazilian rosewood back and sides, and this back stripe is the same thing you'd find on an OM45, one of the most expensive and rarest Martins there are. And an OM45 from 1937 would be mind-blowingly expensive. So a lot of people in the 60s would take off the tops of these when these weren't worth much money at all. They would take off the tops, retop them, and convert them into a flat top. Martin was famous for flat tops, and in the 30s, country music was really what was fairly important to the music scene. If you went out to see music, a lot of times it would be country music or an orchestra with band instruments. So Martin, where Gibson, Stromberg, Epiphone, these were all archtop makers. Martin got into the whole archtop business late in the game, and they carved this top, meaning it was a piece of spruce this big, and they carved it out of the top, and they carved the F holes to enhance the sound. You'll see some of these are a little bigger, some are a little smaller, and all of that done by violin makers. When you're thinking of the 30s, you got to remember that the telephone was not in every home. Radios were just becoming popular. In the early 30s, Ma Bell actually created this genius thing where they actually put the bell ringer for the telephone inside the telephone. What would they think of next? The aviation industry was just getting off the ground. The concept of stewardesses or stewards who would accompany people on airplanes was just getting off the ground. Having a 13-passenger airplane was kind of a big deal, the 30s. And likewise, Martin, even though by then they were 80, 100 years old, yes, 80, 100 years old, Martin was a very small company making very few guitars. And in the midst of the Great Depression, if you could spend the money for a 1937 F-7, this was a lot of money. This was like a year's wages to some people, especially during the Great Depression, and that makes these things very rare. We're going to take a close-up of that headstock. Look at that headstock and that pearl inlay. That is a big deal. It has the original Grover stay tights. There is no brakes on the back of this. It's a nice V'd neck, and then look at the top of the fingerboard. That is fine ebony that you just can't get, and those are large blocks which became standard in the 30s. Again, it's a carved spruce top using ancient spruce too. Not to mention the rosewood from this is Brazilian rosewood. Back in the days when Brazil and the Brazilian rainforest was places where nobody had gone yet. So getting old 700,000-year-old logs were relatively common, but still, Martin was very fussy. These are air-dried and beautiful pieces of wood, the likes of which would be extremely expensive now. These guitars were made for punch. They're made to hit the back of the room, and they're made to be loud enough to be heard over your orchestra horn bands. And a lot of professional musicians were working gigs in radio too. So you'd be in the back of the room while the horns would be in the front. It's really like a tuned snare drum. Driving the rhythm, the guitar player was generally piece of the rhythm section. Drums, bass, guitar, sitting back, laying down the foundation for the horns. That was the 30s. This is an amazing piece of American history. And then take a look at that pickguard too. You can see that multi-bound pickguard. We're reasonably certain that pickguard has been replaced, but getting a guard like that handmade out of this level of plastic is very expensive. So the original bridge, original ebony fingerboard, original tailpiece, there's no cracks. This is a fine guitar, and it comes with its original case, and this is just a fine piece of American history. We bet about half of these have suffered the indignities of having the top removed and are now being sold as a flat top OM45. It would be a shame to do that to a guitar like this. This is under $10,000, which is less than the cost of Brazilian rosewood, and this guitar is perfect for someone who has a collection of Martins or just wants a different flavor. Perhaps you can't afford the L5 from the 40s or 30s. Perhaps you can't afford the Stromberg or can't find the D'Angelico. This is a fantastic jazz box. We'll see you next time. And don't forget to make an appointment. We'll let you come in and screw around with some acoustic guitar. Okay, let the camera fade off to the side. Yeah, there we go.